Wow, I can't believe I was chosen to be a Space Marine. I made it into selection. Now I just have to survive the training.
Are you ready, young one?
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Good. Now which way is left?
What?
The angels of the Emperor must know cardinal directions, boy. Now which way is left?
That way.
Good. And right?
That way?
Correct! Congratulations, you're a Space Marine.
What?
Use your armor, skeleton, and frag grenades. Now, go charge that demon. Do you even lift, bro?
I'm sorry, what?
Good luck.
No!
Yo, that's rough, little bro.
Man! What the fuck? Salutations Rangers, General Rebellion 101, back at you again with some more lore. And welcome ladies and gentlemen to part 2 of our Heresy series. In previous episode, part 1, look over here to watch it, it's pretty good. After you watch this video, naughty little scamper you, we covered the Black Shields of the Space Marine Legions. Those who were betrayed by those who they trusted. So in response, they created something altogether brand new. And now in today's video, episode 2, we're going to be covering something completely different. From the old veterans who really wanted to remember the good old days, to the new ones who may have actually changed everything for the worse, that being Space Marine Inductii. So grab your popcorn and your soda and all the wonderful goodies and snacks, get comfy as we continue with episode 2 of Space Marines in the Heresy, with the Space Marine Inductii. So, what the hell is an Inductii? Well, an Inductii was actually a term that was created and coined by the World Eaters, weirdly enough. You see, the World Eaters had a planet called Bot, or Boat, depending how you pronounce it. Anyway, on the planet of Bot, the World Eaters had developed to creating a brand new set of Astartes, that being blood-crazed butchers. Essentially, these were cannon fodder Space Marines. The gene seed was all types of fucked up, the process was hastened, some of it was cut, some of it was chopped, and their whole purpose was to get the nails in you and to make you blood crazy and bloodthirsty and to charge headlong into combat. They were cannon fodder berserker type ideals. They were everything a Space Marine should not have been. Thus the term Inductii was originally used as a sort of divisive term. Not really so much as a slur, but you definitely wouldn't want to be called it. However, at the outbreak of the heresy, this term would then spread to nearly almost all, to include not just the World Eaters, but any form of Space Marine that was hastily inducted into the Legion, hence the term Inductii. Now, Inductii varied from Legion to Legion to Legion. Now, you had opposite ends of the spectrum. For example, you have the World Eaters, which literally were blood-crazed butchers, and the Iron Warriors, who didn't really put too much stock in these fellas. As Perturabo said, quote-unquote, they are not worth the armor they wear. And on the opposite side, you have the Ultramarines and the Emperor's Children, whose Inductii were basically only one step below normal Space Marines. Mainly because during the Heresy, a lot of the steps had to be cut. As is traditional during warfare, they were still Space Marines, but they didn't have the exact training. As during a 7-year war, taking a full year to train a Space Marine is a bit of a tall ask. Inductii served throughout the Heresy, and in almost every form of Legion. But again, the quality depended per Legion, and some Legions made greater use of them. Generally speaking though, Inductii were a bit more common on the heretic side of things, as generally speaking the loyalists in more secure areas, such as the Imperial Fists as well as Ultramarines, could afford to give their trainees far more recruitment as well as better gear. Whereas like the heretics, who were preparing for a massive push on Terra, well, they just put everything in a damn piece of armor and threw it at the foe. In fact, an unnamed Sons of Horus captain laments about how most of the boys in power armor aren't the hardened veterans who conquered Luna, but rather these weird amalgamations of trainees. So, Inductii were just basically trainee Space Marines, or young Space Marines, or not that good Space Marines, or Space Marines just a tier below. Now you may be asking, okay, alright Brad, I've seen the title, I saw the thumbnail, all this and everything. What did these fellas do? Is their crime just being bad? Well, you see, the parents of the Inductii weren't upset at them just because that they were mediocre, unlike your parents. You see, the real reason why I talk about them is because what they represented. Or rather, what they ended up becoming. You see, during the Heresy, we take a look at the Imperial Fists, and we notice that they had to expedite the process of creating Astartes, with the whole Siege of Terra and whatnot. Now, the Imperial Fists were on Terra, which is the most secure place in the goddamn galaxy, so they could take their time crafting and making their tweaks and changes. But they still decided to expedite the process because they wanted as many bodies on the field as they could muster. Thus, 2 organs that were deemed unnecessary were outright omitted from the indoctrination process, that being the Susan membrane and the Betcher's gland. Now, any one of y'all who are Imperial Fists enjoyers are going, hey, wait a moment. As you would know that in the modern day 40k, those two organs are wholly absent from the Imperial Fists as a quote-unquote genetic defect of the gene seed, which causes them to be inoperable. You're picking down what I'm putting up? Modern day Space Marines are not like 30k Space Marines. We know that, and most people tend to know that. But what we don't know is why or how. And that brings me on to my next point. We have regular Space Marines, and then we have Chaos Space Marines in modern 40k. Now, a common mistake that a lot of new people in 40k make is thinking that a Chaos Space Marine is just a regular Space Marine, but Chaos versioned. That is not true. Now, while it's the case that in some cases they are indeed the same, that's mainly because they are Chaos Warbands, which were loyalists that became Chaos. A true Chaos Space Marine is a veteran of the Long War, i.e. the same old bastards that were fighting 10,000 years ago. That is a true Chaos Space Marine. Now, we know that a Chaos Space Marine does beat a normal Space Marine. Now, some people would say, oh, because the Chaos roids. But no, that's the thing. Think of it like this. Most people think that normal Space Marines are normal bodybuilders. Chaos Space Marines are bodybuilders that have steroids. But it's not just that. A Space Marine is a normal bodybuilder, but a Chaos Marine is a veteran bodybuilder who's been in the Olympia before, who also is taking steroids. Even if you take away the steroids, the Olympia will still be to the normal dude 9 times out of 10. Hell, 10 times out of 10 in some cases. So that begs the question, why? Again, another reason why people say is just veterancy. And that is true, but take away the veteran aspect, take away the Olympia from the bodybuilder, take away that he's been doing this for 10 years, take that away. And when you look at it, you realize that he'll still beat him. Why? Bro just has better genetics. Insert genetics meme here. But in the case of Space Marines, that is actually true. A common insult that you may have heard thrown from Chaos Space Marines to new Marines are young bloods, or thin bloods, specifically. You may also hear Chaos Space Marine talk about Primaris and how that they're still not as good as what they used to be. They're a mockery of what they could have been, that they had a chance to fix it and put it back right, but they still failed. And how the glory of yesteryears will still never be recovered. Which you understand that there is a bunch of Chaos Space Marines who didn't know about the Chaos Gods per se, unless you were in the Word Bearers, that is. They just knew that the Emperor was bad shit. But they still wanted the Imperium, just held by his son, not by Big E. So when all this happened and they realized that the souls were damned to eternity, they kind of just rolled with the punches. A lot of the cases, Chaos Space Marines have a much more nuanced take on it. The idea of the Imperium is something that they still like, but they just hate what it is now. What they love was the old Imperium. Under the Great Crusade, under the War Master, under the Legions. That's the shit. This new stuff, though, is rubbish. So that all begs the question, why is it that Chaos Space Marines are constantly talking about the old days? Is it because they're just salty boomers? Yes, but today's video theory is this. Space Marines, normal 40k Space Marines, Mark 7 standard boys, are not based off the old Great Crusade veterans. Rather, they are based off the Inductii. As we note, the vast majority of legions, at the end of it, were made up of Inductii. 1, the first people to die are the people who are already in the regiment, thus the veteran and the oldest. 2, they recruited Inductii like motherfuckers. Meaning that the vast majority of chapters, aside from the original founding, that being those who still retain the colors of their original legions, were made up of, you guessed it, Inductii. Meaning that the vast majority of every single modern Space Marine is made up of Inductii. Now think about that for a quick minute. Space Marine Inductii already have watered down gene seed. For one reason or another, it was cut, it was manipulated, it was twisted, it was not run through the standard process. Another thing about creating an Inductii, the safety features, the time it took, everything went out the window. It was as quick as possible. Quality was not a factor, it was quantity. So you're taking already watered down gene seed, and you're then watering it down even further by then subdividing it into different foundings, and moreover, the technology of the heresy is not the technology of 40k, meaning that gene seed degradation is way more of a thing, and way more common. So the watered down version of the gene seed is further getting degraded and is further losing its potency, meaning that each subsequent generation of Space Marine is less and less and less impactful. One thing that we know for certain about the first founding chapters, the original chapters, Ultramarines, Salamanders, Iron Hands, etc., they are significantly more impactful than normal Space Marines. With some cases, they're saying that one company of original Legion chapters, that being Salamanders, etc., they're worth a full chapter of normal Space Marines. Now, is that a little excessive? Maybe. I wager the reason why these first founding original chapters are so good is because their gene seed is still pure. Think about that for a quick second. The reason why the OG Ultramarines are so good at what they do is because their gene seed is still Heresy era Space Marine gene seed, or as close as we can get in the modern day. Space Marine Inductii were not the final veterans of the Great Crusade. They were the first soldiers of the Long War. They were not the final soldiers of the Legion. They were the first soldiers of the chapter. Space Marine Inductii were truly the loss of Space Marines. They had not the honors of previous Space Marines. They had not the training. They had not the gear. They had not the gene seed, the very essence of the Primarch. Now remember, in the 2000-ish years after the Heresy, all the Primarchs disappeared. Then in the 34th millennium, the Imperium had a massive civil war again, which most people don't know about, in which it was split into again. And then it was rejoined around the 37th millennium, give or take, 36th, 37th. Meaning, the Imperium truly lost anything it was compared to the Heresy, and the Space Marines also suffered. Any attempt that would have been made to rebuild the gene seed needs a Primarch. The Primarch is the core of the gene seed. I mean, the Emperor's children were nearly wiped out as a legion entirely until they were reunited with Fulgrim. Fulgrim's gene seed fixed the issue with their gene seed. No Primarch, no gene seed. No gene seed, no fix. No fix means deterioration. The point that I'm trying to make here is that the normal Space Marine is not actually a Space Marine. The normal Space Marine is an Inductii, or at worst, the modern battle brother of the battle companies is at very worst a Scout Marine in the Heresy. Now, if this theory is true, that means that the Space Marine, as the Emperor envisioned, does not exist anymore. The chaotic veterans of the Long War have been corrupted by chaos and changed so much that they are literally no longer Space Marines. And the fact that modern gene seed is so watered down means that they are only a shadow of what they should have been. Even Primaris, with all their new fancy gizmos and gadgets, are not what the Emperor had in mind, because the Emperor didn't have a hand in them, and the Primarch's gene seed itself wasn't there. Which means that while Primaris Marines are closer, they're still not Great Crusade era Marines. And that is ultimately where we come down to the crux of it. In the previous episode, we talked about how the idea of a Space Marine was lost. But now, we see how physically a Space Marine was lost. Whilst Mark 7 armor is still pretty good, you take a look at the panoply of Space Marines, it is nothing like the Legions. Not even close. The Dark Angels being the most poignant example. The Heresy-era Dark Angels could easily outmuscle 2 Legions at the same time without breaking a sweat. Now, the modern Dark Angels chapter, it can't do that with 2 other founding chapters. Or it'd be very bloody difficult. Physically, a Space Marine is not a Space Marine anymore. We don't know what a Space Marine is, because it's been lost. And the scary thing is, unless Guilliman understands this, which in my opinion, he does understand, he's trying to rectify it, which is hence him trying to rebuild legions, normal Space Marine gene seed will continue to deteriorate. Even Primaris, if it is not seen to, will eventually begin to continue to be watered down, until eventually the end goal is that Space Marine gene seed will just be an upgraded human. But that's it. An upgraded human is not a demigod. You see, when we think about the Heresy, we often think about it as this big epic fight, this massive civil war in which the Imperium lost all of its technology. But we only see the technology. The Horus Heresy robbed the Imperium of everything. It robbed them of its leaders, it robbed them of its ideas, it robbed them of its morals, it robbed them of its physical blood. The physical organs that made up a Space Marine were lost. They were changed, they were watered down, they were mutilated for the sole fact that everything else didn't matter except for getting bodies on the field. Because of that, the physical means to create a Space Marine was lost. We lost everything about a Space Marine in the Heresy. We lost the idea, and we lost the physical body of it. Now, in the modern day and era, with 2 loyalist Primarchs returning, will we see a return of the Legions and a return of the proper gene seed? Who knows? One may hope, but in the end, we don't really know. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. A little bit shorter this time, but not really much to say about it. Space Marines are not actually Space Marines, they're just watered-down versions. Like putting too much water in your Kool-Aid. We don't actually have Kool-Aid here in South Africa, we have cordial, which is kind of Kool-Aid, except it doesn't come pre-mixed, it comes in like a syrup and you have to fill it. It's pretty good. I like the passion fruit one myself. But yeah, thank you guys also very much for watching. I do love and appreciate y'all. Let me know down below, what do you guys think about, hey, Space Marines actually not being Space Marines? Because we think of Space Marine as like the lord, like these Space Marines, super cool, but it turns out that modern day Space Marines aren't actually Space Marines. They're actually way less than what they're supposed to. They're pretty shit, which is kind of weird to say about Space Marines, but it does make sense when you think about some of the inconsistencies. So let me know down in the comments below, what do y'all think? Do you guys have any more examples like the Imperial Fist of like gene seed being mutated or corrupted or like it being lost? Let me know what you guys think. But I want to thank you guys also very much for watching, and a very big thank you to Mr. Thomas Moslons and Mr. Ivan_SPW who joined in with the private tier. Thank you guys also very much. It means a world to me the fact that you boys sign up. YouTube ad revenue is not that consistent, so having you boys join up and just give me that extra little bit of care at night, it does mean the world to me, and I do love and appreciate y'all. But remember, y'all don't gotta pay for this, it will always be free, and y'all watching it just means the world to me. But sign up with the memberships to gain access to a bunch of new benefits, including getting these videos a full day earlier than they should, as well as getting your name up here, entry into the Legion of Legends, and a whole bunch of wonderful stuff. And goddammit, I'll just end up loving you more. But I have been General Bradley 101, you've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Nearly forgot, my bad. Keep a lookout for next episode when we're going to be talking about just how destructive the Heresy era Space Marines were, and how modern Space Marines don't hold a candle. Not only in terms of physical destruction, we'll cover that later, but moreover, the sheer vileness of destroying oneself. As we take a look at the Word Bearers, and how they were the best example of what all Space Marines were meant to do. But that's next episode. But until then, I have been General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank y'all also very much for watching. I do love and appreciate y'all. Make sure you stay respectful out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers! Bro, imagine being a veteran of a couple 100 years, and then some mechanicus dude just tells you, nah, your fucking organs are made from watered down bad Kool-Aid.